Oh. Welcome to the She4 Show. I'm your host, Amy Carlson, and today I have my friend Jenn Day, emotional weight of armor coach here. Jenn, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Oh, it's a blast to get to see you again. I'm just going to preface everything and say Jenn and I met only like a month ago, a little over a month ago, when we
Yeah.
attended the same business event, and we got to be buddies during one of the days and got to know each other more. And of course, Jenn needed to come on this show and speak with you about what has gone on in her life and what she's doing as she moves forward. So, Jenn, first of all, I just have to say, I've never seen a title like this, Emotional Weight of Armor Coach. I love it. And I want to hear what that means and how this title came about.
So the emotional weight of armor coach, it kind of came from um I am trauma informed somatic practitioner. And I'll give you a story about that in a moment. But as I was doing the work in a 6-month container, it dawned on me how important the inner work is. I had been doing lots of, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I had done some EMDR. Um, I am Reiki 1 attuned. I am also an integrated energy therapist. And the components, if you try to keep them separate, they have an impact, but it doesn't give the whole process a chance to really kind of work inward, right? And so if you're just working from a surface level, you oftentimes don't dive into kind of what you're looking at necessarily. And depending on who you're working with, you don't always have that opportunity. And so I was like, wow, what's going on with me is so much more internal than I gave myself credit for or that I was willing to see at the time. So I'm actually and for me the weight of armor started off as helping people like lose the extra weight that they have, because I've lost 125 pounds. And so in doing that, I was like, yeah, diet's good. I could do some exercise. I could do this. I could do that. And I lost about 60 pounds or so. And then I had cancer surgery in February of 2021. And I was like, all right, now I need to get back on track. I need to do something. And when I started doing this container with the woman that I was working with, I was like, oh, so much of this is emotional weight. It's like an armor that you put on, almost like a knight in the medieval times would put on armor to protect you. Well, you don't realize just how much armor you put on to protect yourself until it comes up in a health issue, or you're noticing stressors in your body, or potentially it is extra physical weight. And when I first put my title together, I was like, yeah, I'm a somatic weight of armor coach. And people were like, that's great. What is that? Well, soma is your body. And then weight of armor, people thought, well, maybe it's just weight loss. And I thought, oh, no, 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 no. If we work on your emotional weights of armor that you peel off, a lot of times that physical weight will come with it. And they were like, what? And I was like, there it is. That's my magic word. So I'm transformative and empowering. But it is a lot of, it's not I fix you. It is literally giving the tools to help you understand what's happening in your body, your nervous system, and how you got there.
Nice. I love that. And the
Thanks.
evolution of how it all came to be and finding
Yes.
the right words. I'm such a believer in um, the the frequency of words and then what they mean as to what we're trying to get across. And then, of course, we each have our own um, filter that we look at that through. But I love the process that you went through to come up with that. And it's so unique and catchy. And then now, of course, I would love for you to share, how did you get to the place of becoming an emotional weight coach? Emotional
That
weight armor.
process, right? That process was not actually a whole lot of fun. I'm those who are helping other people. Um, the beauty is in the process we went through, and then being able to say, I did it. I can help you work through it. So I had been in the construction industry for a man's world for 27 years. And while I loved it in my 20s and my early 30s, I moved from New England down to Florida in about 7 years ago. And the dynamic here is different than it was up north. Some of it is more laid back in some instances. However, it didn't make a difference whether I was there or here. There was a component of needing to like prove myself constantly. So and I know lots of other women in the industry, and I think it's wonderful that we're in there and we're doing our thing, but it didn't make a difference whether you had a degree or you didn't have a degree. There was just so much effort having to be put in to prove that you could still be at the same table they were, run a project, do budgeting. I was on the admin side, assistant project manager, project coordinator, project engineer, depending on the company and what their title was. But and I would do walks out in the field, but at the same time, it still was just a lot of like sitting equal elbow to elbow with a man and feeling like I didn't measure up in just the context of how the industry goes. And ironically, when I started doing the inner work, I realized just how much of that actually came from childhood. Um, I was a heavy child. I've been heavy my entire life. I'm very curvy. Probably, if you had your choice, I would have gone back to the medieval times when, everything was curvy and vivacious then, although it's starting to kind of come back now. So, this world is an interesting place that we are. But um, I was one of those kids that was seen and not heard. My mom was an only child, and my grandfather really wanted a boy. So he didn't have that hunting and fishing buddy that he wanted as a kid. Then I was the firstborn. So again, he didn't get his grandson. My brother was able to go hunting or fishing with my dad and my grandpa. I was not. Which is funny. I don't know if that's the reason why I picked hey, I can't do the things that you guys say I can't. Well, let me go get a Harley and ride my Harley. Let me take up fishing as a sport with my daughter. Let me go work in construction. I don't know if I thought I was being rebellious. Maybe that's where the badass actually started, was way back then. But I literally I developed a complex as a young child, and feeling like I was not worthy, that I wasn't lovable, even in my young childhood years. And I'm sure that's not what my family wished to create for me. They didn't have the tools and the knowledge that we have available to us now, and how that affects our little spongy brains before age 7 and all of that stuff. So but there was a lot of like not measuring up, and in my, I want to say it was 11 or 12, my grandfather, in his way of, I think, being supportive, although as a child it did not come across that way at all, was fat is ugly and boys won't like fat, and you're gonna date from, you're gonna have all the not so great folks. When you aren't equipped with the discernment at 6 or 7, hey, you eat all your food on your plate. It's not a restaurant at home, right? There's not like 18 choices. So it's whatever's put on your plate, and now you can't get up from the table till it's all gone. Well, we know that intuitive eating now is a thing, right? Your body is craving it, give that what it wants. And then it's done with that craving for a moment, and you don't have to have, even if you were to indulge, you could indulge in a bite or two and satiate the craving and be done with it, as opposed to like, eating a giant slice of cake or, ice cream or some indulgence component. And so as a kid, I didn't know portion sizes. You don't know what you're supposed to eat and what you're not supposed to eat. I came from a Polish family, like my mom's entire side. So it was a lot of guamki, stuffed cabbage and pierogi, and goodies like that. And those are heavier foods. And then there was a lot of sweets. We did a lot of baking. And So if you don't know what a portion size is and you don't really understand the nutritional facts of food, I didn't move around a lot as a kid. There weren't, it wasn't until I was a little older that there was a lot more movement in terms of like go outside and play. And so you don't understand how all of that ties in. And so I used to sneak food at one point when people started making comments about my body and whatnot. I would just sneak food into my closet. And that actually ended up, although I wasn't officially diagnosed, knowing what I know now, that was like an eating disorder tendency, right? That component of having to hide food or having to hide my body in some way, shape, or form, which as an adult I did in clothes that were a size or two bigger to kind of mask and not have to be seen, if you will.
Yeah.
So once I was actually laid off from my corporate construction job, panic set in. And then eventually it was like, oh, okay, this, like I served my time in that arena and I've learned the multiple lessons that come with that. Like stand up for yourself. Absolutely. Go in there and do your best. But then at the end of the day, if it's not a good fit, honor you. And
Yeah.
so during that process, I had joined the container just a little bit before that, for months before that moment. And um, it was actually joining that container was a result of being engaged to somebody after my cancer surgery. He walked out 8 weeks before our wedding. And I literally was living a real life version of a narcissistic sociopath. He had a girlfriend on the East Coast that we were together for like 2.5 years. So I had no idea. Neither did anybody else in my life on my side here. And he had a wife who had been chasing him down for a divorce. So I shut down. My nervous system completely froze and I went into a panic and was like, I can't trust myself. What was I thinking? How did I not know? All of the things that come with any kind of traumatic moment, because the trauma isn't necessarily the actual event. It's not the car accident. It's all the effects of after it, right? So even in this instance, it was like, oh, like now I can't function. I don't know how to trust myself. Like I had somebody in my space, which was supposed to be my sanctuary. There was all the things that started kind of flooding up at once. So when I started doing the work, I realized just how much of it came from the components in my younger life and really owned the fact that I was the common denominator in the choices I made, right? Like there are only so many things that you can say, well, this influenced me and this influenced me. Great. It happens every day. But then at the end of the day, you made the decision to go right or left in your path or straight or turn around or, whatever the case is. And so it was like, all right, how do I correct this from happening? Or how do I make this so that it's not so difficult on myself? And once I realized that my nervous system had been just kind of hijacked for a long, long time, it was like super high functioning anxiety and, like a hyper vigilant, some days I would be passive aggressive, another day it was exhausting. And when you think about all the things that happen in your body as that's happening, that just thought process is exhausting. And so when you realize how much taxing energy that is, or an energy vampire, you're like, oh, you see yourself soften. You're like, oh, there's a better way. There could be a better way. How do I get there? What do I have to do? In my case, I sold my house. I finally trusted myself to have a boyfriend after that whole experience. And once we realized that we weren't aligned, I let that go. And then I sold my house. And I literally, the morning I got laid off from my job, I walked my hometown green with my girlfriend, who's also an energy worker and a massage therapist in Connecticut. And I was like, girl, I need to get out of this stressful situation. I'm like working 16 hours a day. There's no appreciation. I'm constantly getting yelled at. Like, I don't want any of this anymore. We hugged. I got in my car and I got a phone call from my boss who had HR on the line. And they were like, so we had that buyout a while back and it's private equity and they're combining departments and you're one of four. We're sorry. And I didn't have any health insurance as of midnight that night. There was no severance package. And it was a whole lot of like, WTF, what just happened to me? Because when you put that out there in the universe that you want to change, you don't necessarily get to pick the timeline. So I sat on my grandma's grave. I drove. I mean, I was thankful to be home in Connecticut. I drove to my grandma's grave. I sat for like an hour and I just cried my eyes out and said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then it came to me, sure you do. Your house is under contract to sell. Go home, finish packing, and decide what you want to do next with your life. And here I am. Like it literally, it's been unfolding ever since that day. And you watched it unfold over the last several weeks since we first met.
Exactly. Exactly. And as you discuss this, and words that come up to me are that sense of proving. I think like that. I think a lot of us can relate to that in one way or another, and it's so heavy. And you also mentioned the word effort. That proving and that effort, and just this draining. And then another word that you have been circling around too is trust. And so now when I met you on the other side of all of this, and I see this woman who is self-assured and embraces her curves and very full of self-trust.
Thank you.
But obviously you have, like you say, you've done the work, and
And
you
it's ongoing work, to be honest, right? I mean, when you start working with somebody and they're like, oh, this is great, I'm just going to get healed. Sure, at that level. And then if you're like an onion at level, that's level 5, right? You're dealing with whatever today's issue is. And at level 15, it may look the same, but it's not. Rest assured, it is not the same. It is literally maybe some residual energy left over or something along those lines. But healing is such an ongoing process, and that curiosity to learn, to take every challenge that shows up, and instead of go, why is this happening to me, say, what is this teaching me, what is coming up, and to lean into that is a different, so like that trust didn't just happen like, I'm just going to trust myself now. It was a start small, do a little stepping stone and be like, okay, I'm going to trust that I'm going to get 3 things done on my to-do list today, and then go do those 3 things. And if you can get to a 4th or 5th thing, great. But you trusted that you could handle those 3 things. I mean, something simple as that can help build those little tiny steps in yourself again after something really big that's been very activating for your nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is your vision? I'd love to hear your vision about what you see in your future, whether it is you directly or even just for the world or just all of it. I know that you've got I know you've got big ideas and exciting plans.
I do. So obviously I'm an author, and my journal just came out. Like that was an experience for us to be as a part of the event in which we met.
And mention
And
the title.
oh, I even have a copy of it
Ooh,
here.
right on.
It's Be Fierce, Be Authentic, Be Badass. And it is your guide to thriving through big life change.
Perfect.
Um,
That just sounds
it,
right
it
on
and it
the-
and it has, it has journal prompts in here. It has corresponding quotes. It's got a page on the other side that you can doodle, because if you have an ADHD brain like mine, I need a moment. Sometimes those topics are very heavy. There's a notes section in the back. There's ways to connect with me. And I mean, I decided to join the event that we met at kind of on the late side. So I like was rushing to put this together, and I was like, oh, but this came so easy. So I am in a couple more books this year. Later in the year they'll be released. Those 2 are collaborations, but I have another one I think might be in the works, but I don't know if it's this year or next year. I'm doing guest speaking. And that is actually something that I'm finding I really enjoy, connecting with people in a very natural way of, the topics are vast, and yet oftentimes they come from that same inner wounding place. And how do you kind of adventure to that without it being like an instant heavy topic where everybody's like, nope, thanks, we're good. Um, and there's a delicate balance to that, right? You kind of have to lean into the energy you're getting from people, and then also what it is that they're wanting to accomplish. um, and like, I see some collaborations coming in the future, because there are some topics that the today's topic specifically, um, body dysmorphia is something I've experienced. And even though I didn't have an official diagnosis, I actually watched someone, experience that. Not that I don't watch this happen more regularly, but people often think that it applies to only heavier people or those who have lost a bunch of weight that don't see their smaller, healthier version in the mirror. And that's actually not true, believe it or not. I pulled some stats: 5 to 10 million people in the US, almost equal men and women, go through body dysmorphia. I have some more statistics later on, but that's a lot of people. Whether they're officially diagnosed or not, that's a lot of people to have that. And it's not just, hey, I don't, my face looks like I could, do a facial right now. It's not even a matter of that. There's so much more to it. So, um, but I know that I want to be part of the healing that the world needs, and to be in collaboration with some of the beautiful women I met in our camp, and also some of those that I know around here locally to me. But I'm appreciative of the fact that the second I stepped into this arena, it went from like a small construction site of whoever's on there for the subs or the other, general contractor or whatever, to connections with women across the US, some
Nice.
of them outside of the US. And that part is so exciting to me, because all of us have unique talents, and bring so many different things to the table, that even another coach has another perspective that can help somebody. It's not a competition, if you will, of like, oh, well, we're all fighting for the same client. We're not, because we all do something very different. And those people will find us in, being able to do our outward things of Facebook Live, podcast, guest speaking, virtual summits, writing a book, any of those things. It gets our word out there. And actually that's part of the gift, is giving that back after going through something and being able to come out on the other side. I didn't know what I needed at that time. So I didn't necessarily know I needed to ask for something that was beyond like just a surface level in like behavioral therapy. And once I realized that that need was there, it was like, okay, well, how do I present that to other people so that they feel that same level of support that they might not really know they need yet, but they need it.
Yeah.
So
And I think everything that you described in your vision, to me, the word that was coming up in my mind was abundance, the mindset of abundance. I think so often, whatever our individual healing work that we're doing, it
mhm.
stems from lack, feeling less than, feeling unworthy, that whole scarcity kind of uh, vibration. And everything you just described, and especially that feeling of collaboration and not competition, that's that abundance mindset, that feeling of it, just like your smile, and the glow of seeing you light up from within. That is the feeling of abundance. And that's like the best marketing, right? Like, people just connect with
It
that,
is.
and then they want to be around you more.
And I'm all for that. I mean, you instantly, I think that's how we vibed, right? There are people that you instantly feel connected to. and you might not be able to explain why in the moment. And then you're like, oh, we have a similar story, we have a similar background, we have a similar passion, or whatever those things are. And then you're like, yes, more of those people in my life, please. Your vibe attracts your tribe is not just a cliche. It really does make a difference, and you are correct. The more that you stay stuck in lack, the more you technically invite more lack. I mean, that's a hard one for a lot of people. And I mean, it's for all of us. I mean, I've experienced it myself. So it's not just all right, well, don't think that way today. It's not so much just well, love yourself. Just go love yourself. You can do it. It's not a matter of that. That mind body connection is really important, but it is not just a mindset. It is literally inclusive of all the things, and not everybody knows how to connect it all. So, having the tools to be able to do that makes it, a beautiful gift. And I mean, I'm not a therapist, so if somebody comes and they need that level of support, I have referrals. If they're local to here, me in Florida, there are ways to find out who's local to those folks, wherever they are in the world. So I'm not opposed to saying, hey, I cannot help you where you're at right now. You might need a little bit more help, but I'm happy to refer you to someone. And I think that's also a beautiful gift of being able to recognize the needs of folks, and to be able to have a conversation with them and see what their goals are, and where we can help, and where they may need extra support. I could be a team member, but they might need a team. And knowing that difference, I think, also is a service to
Yes,
clients.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I'm so glad that going back to your title and the emotional component of that, and talking about mind, body, spirit, and mindset and all the pieces, I'm so glad that the word emotion and emotional is starting to be used more, accepted more, not looked at as through such a judging kind of lens. But that is
Yes,
part of us. We have emotions.
we
And
do.
yeah,
Oftentimes we were told not to. We learned in childhood very quickly that having big emotions isn't necessarily well tolerated. And it has a lot to do with the generations and what was passed down for information. But, a child who's running down the sidewalk that falls and scrapes their knee, it's one of the first lessons that little kids learn, right? And you learn that you're not supposed to listen to your body at that moment, because somebody picks you up, dusts you off, and says, stop crying. But crying is actually a very natural process of your body. It is a great way to release an emotion. And for a little one who was just happy go lucky running, now face planted, they're like, what just happened to me? So, and as adults, that's the exact way to look at it as an adult too. I'm running through life and then I faceplant. What happened to me? It's okay to process, and it's actually required for you to process those emotions out. Because if you don't and keep stuffing them, you'll eventually fill your container, whatever that container looks like, and there won't be any more room for anything else. But if you're able to keep generating it in and out, you've always got space in your container for new experiences, new memories, and it all ties back to our emotions. So if you were told you can't have emotions, or having emotions was not well tolerated, that is a really big thing to learn. And it is an even bigger thing to unlearn as you grow up. And some people never get to it. Some people, it's okay. This is my life. And, but when you actually start looking at it, you're like, wow, it started so long ago.
yeah. And when you're visual there with your hands in the container, and like that,
Mhm.
the energy moving around, and being able to not just be condensed, but like, breathe in between all of those situations and emotions and life happening. That's a beautiful explanation of
Thank
that.
you.
And I just, as we get ready to wrap this up, I am curious if there's anything else that you want to add to this conversation or encourage people towards, or
Well, so just a little bit more about body dysmorphia. Like, I don't know if you know this, but like evidence of eating disorders was something as far back as the Middle Ages. Like, they literally, starvation was a various method to achieve a particular societal look even back then. And then the ideal shape of people over time changed to a slimmer physique. And so over the course of time, like the proof of shame and judgment and guilt around what we look like, or the comparison game, um the, the body positivity movement that came out in the 60s, that was about fat shaming, to be honest. And it was a way to kind of self-regulate that. And when people actually look, body dysmorphia itself is a disorder. They considered it a disorder. For a long time. They considered it like a vanity, a beauty thing. And tendencies is, like when you go out to a big event, you want to look nice. So you check yourself in the mirror as you're getting ready. You might check once more before you walk out the door. But when they're talking about it from a disorder standpoint, it's really the perceived flaws that you have and how much it affects your daily life and the functions of your daily life. And it becomes excessive focus over the course of time, whether it's your face, your hair, your nose, your shape, and the fact that it actually it affects men and women so, like, and so impactfully every single day. I actually pulled some stats, so I wanted to read those real quick. 2.4% of adults in the US struggle with it. So it's almost equal between men and women. So that's that 5.5 to 10 million people we were talking about in the beginning. Want to take a guess of how many people have it by the time they're 18? 2/3 of people that have BDD have the onset of it. The average age is about 16 or 17, but the most common age is 12 or 13.
oh, wow.
Think about the time. 12 or 13, you were developing, you're going through puberty, you already feel awkward in your skin, you don't know about the changes happening in your body other than what you're learning in school. And then people are making fun of you because you developed sooner than somebody else or later than somebody else. And this is when this starts. This is when it can be impactful. And if you're diagnosed, therapy and perhaps some medication can be helpful with that. But sometimes it could be misdiagnosed as having OCD or social anxiety, or, it it really has such a level of impact. And for some people, they either go to a place where they are obsessed with whatever kind of cosmetic surgery they can to make alterations to fit in. Some people have gone through, and they feel terrible about themselves and how they look in their body. They have suicidal thoughts. It is a huge impact, and something that a lot of people don't necessarily look at from that standpoint. But I mean, even during the event that we were at, like, we saw other people who were like, going through something where they don't feel comfortable in whatever they're wearing, or somebody who's lost a lot of weight doesn't see themselves thin now. But I know plenty of people who are thin that still have it. They don't like this shape, or they don't have a shape. They feel flat. They don't, and so, like, in our adventure during our camping event, I've lost the weight, and I see that I can wear a different size clothing now. But you know, uh, our professional photo shoot was so much fun. But there was a component of that where I was like, "That's me? Wow, those curves look good," and I'm thinking, I go back to that photo often, was like, wow. And then you come home to your everyday life, and you're like, is that the same body that I went there with, that I came home with? It is, isn't it? It's the same clothes. So why didn't I see myself this way here when I saw myself that way there, when it was fancy hair and fancy makeup? Because I can put that same dress on home here. Why wouldn't it, you know? And so there's a component of like allowing yourself that grace and that compassion and that self-love that you know that you're feeling. I mean, I even had, you know, like I have sagging skin on my tummy, my arms, and you know, so I mean, I had a moment during the the trip that I was like, I just, you know, I don't like any of that. And then I remembered the importance of what I like to lean into is called body neutrality. And it is literally accepting that your body allows you. It's like the most precious machine you own. But the next one that you would say is really important in your life might be your car. So you put fuel in your car, you change the oil, you rotate the tires, you wash it, and it gets you from point A to point B. And you're happy. And when it starts really having issues, you might choose to get a different car. But if we looked at that neutrality component from your body standpoint, you know, I was all hung up and, oh, I've got saggy skin on my tummy. All right, well, how about I appreciate the fact that those marks on my tummy are from birthing a beautiful baby girl who now has two beautiful baby boys of her own. And I'm still able to, you know, move. I can go to the gym. I can take a walk with the dogs. I can go out dancing, which is my favorite. You know, I can do those things. So appreciate the senses. I have sight, I have smell, I have touch, I have hearing, I have taste. And if I look at that neutrality component, just like my car, it's not just about diet and exercise, because one person could starve themselves and exercise a ton, and it's not any healthier than, you know, it's than any other method. It's not just one component or the other. Once you start putting it all together, and once, I mean, for me specifically, once I did that inner work, a lot of the physical weight of armor came off. Like I literally was holding on to something that was like protective measure. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be heard. Almost like I was wearing size clothing during my pregnancy with my daughter that was just the next size bigger. Nobody knew I was pregnant. I gained like 13 pounds with her. Like nobody knew I was pregnant. I just wore the next size clothes bigger until like the very end. And they were like, oh, you're having a baby? Yeah, I'm having a baby. So, but that, you know, the societal comparison game kind of came after the body positivity movement. I mean, I'm sure you remember in 2004 when Dove said, love the body you're in. We all thought that was the greatest thing because everybody was included. And it was right until the societal comparison came in. For then everybody's like, oh, well, you are in a different shape, you're in a different size, you've got curvier thighs, you know, you have a different frame. And then all of those things started coming to light. If you are told that you have to love your body constantly, no matter what, it is such an unrealistic goal. And the easiest way to set yourself up for your own disappointment, um, and of course, we're in a world of social media now. So anytime you go online, whether it's for your business or your, like, you could easily get sucked into that whole comparison game, you know, and none of that's healthy. Like, honor where you are in your journey. It might not be quite where you're at yet, where you want to be at. But if you were like, hey, I got up this morning, I was able to go make myself some great breakfast, take a walk. I'm enjoying the fresh air. I have wind chimes outside here. I love hearing my wind chimes. Like, if you can express that level of appreciation and gratitude, almost like doing a gratitude journal at the end of the night. You know, I have a little notebook or the night side of the bed, and I'm like, all right, 3 things that I, you know, I'm so grateful for today. Or a brain dump, like, hey, I wanted to get to 6 things and I only did 3. Well, jot down the 3 things that I need to do. It's part of my to-do list for tomorrow. If you could look at your body in that same frame of, hey, thank you for what it's doing, what it has done, what has it provided, from more of a positive standpoint. Because if you think about every challenge that we've ever experienced in our life, even though you can't necessarily see it in the moment, is a growth opportunity. And I'm able to say that now, but I could not then. I did a whole lot of like, what did I do? Why am I being punished? All of that stuff. But once I was able to kind of take a step back and understand, it was just another level of gift for me to lean into the curiosity of like, okay, I made a step left. All right, what did that left turn show? Is it good? Can I keep down that left hand? Or do I need to backtrack and pivot and kind of move a little bit differently to honor what it is I need? And for me, boundaries was a really big thing in the inner work of honoring me or getting to know who I was and what I wanted, and then putting boundaries up to keep out what didn't work and, allow myself to have what I did need was a lot of it. And once those things were, put into place, that was really good. And I'll say on the days when, and this is actually funny, but on the days when I'm having a moment, I forgot the keys or I went to the grocery store and left the grocery bags at home or whatever in the trunk. I used to beat myself up a lot. And my girlfriend's like, beat yourself up? I think of it as beat yourself down, kind of like that negative stick where you kind of like you lose who you are. But our mentor actually taught us to say, I'm so pretty. So I can't tell you how many times a day I am so pretty now as I have those moments. But the reason why I share this is just in the same way that the body neutrality is important. That is a kind way of having compassion for yourself, bringing that kindness to the surface and giving myself that it's okay to be a human being in that moment. It directs my brain to a happier thought. And I feel like if you are able to kind of catch yourself a little sooner on a neutrality component, instead of all the things that you don't like, there are things that you can do to make changes, healthier changes. But instead of it being such a negative experience all the time, if you can come from a more neutral standpoint, it takes that emotion out of it. And the emotion, the more stuck that emotion is, the more rooted it is. And oftentimes weight will attach itself to that, whether it's mental weight, that weight on your shoulders, or it's a combination with physical weight. And I discovered it kind of by accident. And I'm a big Brene Brown fan. So, there was actually something she mentioned in one of her podcasts about, the armor. When you dare to drop your armor, you can literally, you'll understand the belonging, the joy, the love that comes with life. And I thought, wow, so profound,
Yeah,
so profound.
absolutely. Oh, Jen, thank you so much for this discussion today and this
You're
topic.
welcome.
This topic
Thank you.
that could use more light, more to talk about it in open and honest ways. And I appreciate the statistics as well that you provided.
Yeah.
I was not aware of those.
Yeah, no. It was once I started doing the research for it, because I was like, I know this affects more than people. And I'm very curious to see, of your followers, who who literally experiences this? Who else can identify with a moment of this, whether it's something that they've experienced more than once in life, or they just had that thought like, oh yeah. But I would love to see feedback from folks and see how that's come up for them over the course of time. I always wear, so I have my mom's wedding band set is with me, and she passed 9 years ago, and my dad gave me her set. So she always stays with me as a reminder that I am headed in the right direction to help people. But the other ring that I wear says I am enough. And it is on those days when I'm really struggling, because we all still have those moments, even in the healing arena, there's still a level of healing for us to do, and having that support system is a wonderful thing. But there are moments where I'm like, you know what? You can be judgmental for like the next 3 minutes, and then you can just stop it, because you just sort of maybe get that out of your system, but then kind of come back to that. And so if you can catch yourself a little bit sooner, And I think sometimes that's the goal of it, is not that you never have another negative thought. That's not realistic. It's can you kind of catch that sooner, and how can you be kinder to yourself? So I'm very appreciative of you having me on here today, and to get connect again, but also to talk about something that I didn't necessarily know when I started this adventure that I'd be this passionate about it. But as I talk about it more and I see how it impacts others, and how I can be helpful or how I can refer people, um, it it just makes me that much more excited every single time.
And you can tell. So we'll kind of close it with that, just like what your ring says. And before we hit the record button, I was telling Jen that I just saw a billboard the other day driving, and it just said, "You are enough." Uh, so thanks for listening. Thanks for being here, Jen.
Thank you.
And as we always end the show, know yourself, be yourself, free yourself. Until next time.